Okay, so here's part one of my journey. So on July 24th, 2020, I went to the emergency room for pain in my side. They believed it was possible kidney stones and did a urine test. The urine test came back positive for pregnancy. Mind you, the doctor asked me if I thought I could be pregnant. At the time, didn't think so. Took a pregnancy test earlier that week, came back negative, had the Mirena, so didn't really think anything of it. Comes back positive. Mind you, doctors making fun of how to tell me outside my room, along with one of the nurses, because, again, I swore up and down, couldn't possibly be pregnant, etc. So they tried to think of a way to tell me that I may be pregnant. Alright, everyone, here's some background information that I should have included in part one. So very sorry I didn't. So, number one, I was at the hospital alone. Due to COVID, no one else could be in the room with me at this time. Number two, there was three doctors working on this matter. A regular head doctor, an attending physician, and a resident who was in training. I had two nurses also working on this matter, a gentleman who was beyond rude, not so very kind, and then a female that came in at the end who was beyond amazing, absolutely gracious, loved her to pieces. Also, my husband was suffering from kidney stones during this time. So keep all this information in mind, and then I'll place everything and tell you what happened further. So stay tuned. Alright, TikTok, here's part two. So, was at the ER, again, urine test done, came back positive. Of course, I knew this because there's this lovely thing called My Chart where they can upload records to instantly. So, of course, I knew this before the doctors started talking outside my room. The resident came in to ask me how I was doing, so I just sat there. I'm like, good, still in pain, etc. Could still hear my regular doctor, so the head doctor, and the attending physician outside my room joking around about this matter with one of the nurses. And this was the gentleman nurse who I said was extremely rude, etc. So, again, door was left open, door is made of glass, could hear everything that they were saying and joking about. So, stay tuned for part three. Alright, so here's part three. They finally agreed to come in and join the resident in my room and tell me this information that they found. So the regular doctor comes in and goes, I have some news for you. I'm like, I already know. I'm pregnant. Got my chart. Heard you guys talking outside my door, etc. Look on his face goes completely blank and goes, well, now that you know this, are you sure when you took your pregnancy test earlier in the week at home that it came back negative? I had the Mirena at this time, so of course I check all the time because with my Mirena, completely stopped my flow. So, swore up and down on everything that, yep, positive, came back negative, here's a picture of it, etc. So, kept questioning me, really thought that I was wrong about my test that I took at home. Stay tuned for part. Okay, so here's part four. After fighting with the doctor for several minutes about me taking a test earlier in the week and showing it being negative, I got frustrated and asked him what the next steps were. So he decided that he was going to do blood work to test my HCG levels to see where they were. So he sent in the douchebag nurse, so the guy nurse, along with another individual to take my blood. Blood was taken. The collector left the room, so I was left with the guy nurse, who was, again, very, very rude. He was sitting there telling me not to tell my husband that I could possibly be pregnant because we don't want to get him excited. How it could possibly be an ectopic pregnancy or an early miscarriage because it wasn't showing up that much in my year. So after talking with the douchebag nurse for several minutes, I asked him to leave the room. um, because he wasn't comforting me. He wasn't helping me with the situation. He was actually escalating it and making me feel worse. So, of course, me freaking out, messaged my husband, told him that I'm either pregnant, possibly miscarried, had an ectopic pregnant, or totally not pregnant at all. So the head doctor came back in with one of the residents and decided to do a simple ultrasound with one of the handheld machines, etc. Nothing was showing on that, so they decided to wait for my blood work to see what came back with my blood work and possibly order a second ultrasound. So waiting several hours, or actually an hour for my blood work to come back, came back with slightly elevated HCG levels, but not high enough for them to think I was pregnant. So after speaking with the doctor about my blood work coming back slightly elevated, but not anything to really worry about, they decided that they were going to order a second ultrasound with a regular ultrasound tech to see if they could find anything. Of course, they did a stomach and then a vaginal. And what came up on the vaginal ultrasound was there was a little sac next to one of my ovaries. They weren't sure if it was a cyst or what, if it was an early embryo that burst, etc. So they decided that I didn't miscarry, possibly had an ectopic, or again, not pregnant at all. They couldn't really tell me anything, so they told me to follow up with my regular OBGYN. So after being at the hospital several hours, nothing came of anything, still in pain. So this had my OBGYN questioning what was really going on with me at this time. to have my levels keep increasing instead of lowering. That brought concern to her because she's like, okay, maybe it's not a miscarriage like I originally thought. There was something there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you come back later on in the week for another blood draw. So I think I went that Friday for another blood draw. That one came back slightly lower than the one that I had initially that week. So she's like, okay, your levels aren't dropping to where they need to be. So this is bringing lots of concern to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one more blood draw, have you come back next week. So I went back next week about the middle of the week when I had my first blood draw done. I think it was, again, a Wednesday. Waited for those results to come back, and that's when the good news didn't happen. So the results came back, and my doctor personally called me this time, so that's how I knew something was really, really wrong. She told me that I needed to get down to labor and delivery at the hospital near me as soon as possible because I'm suffering from an ectopic pregnancy, and they needed to give me the medicine right away to stop it. So this brought concern to me. My husband and I threw on our clothes, got down to the hospital, told my boss, hey, I gotta leave for the day, etc. We got to the hospital. We had to have more labs done, etc. before they could give me my first dose of methotrexate, which, if you don't know what that is, it is a medicine given to cancer patients, but it's also used for ectopic pregnancies because it stops the cells from dividing in your body to cause further damage to us women. So the nurses and doctors went over everything that I needed to know about the methotrexate because there are certain foods that you can't eat. So anything green, leafy, etc., because of the folic acid in that, you can't eat that. Have to stop taking prenatal vitamins if you're already taking those, etc. Went over all the worst case scenarios. Have to avoid sunlight for a certain number of days. Can't drink alcohol, etc. So there's a lot to go along with this process. And then they gave me my first dose of methotrexate. It is given to you in each butt cheek, right where your ovaries line up with your back. Very painful process, but they make it quick, do it at the same time, get it over and done with, put Band-Aids on you, and then you have to sit for a little bit to make sure you don't pass out, etc. And then they discharge you and send you on your way. Stay tuned for more. So just to recap over the parts that I've done so far. So I initially went to the ER for pain in my side. Thought it was kidney stones. Turned out to be, hey, no kidney stones there. We're not even going to test you for kidney stones. Took a urine sample, came back positive for pregnancy. Further testing was done. Blood work. HCG levels were normal, so not pregnant. Had an ultrasound done, which came back small cyst on one of my ovaries, so they think, possible embryo, don't know. So maybe you were pregnant, but you had a miscarriage. Went to my OBGYN, had blood work done, levels went up and down, here and there, pretty much all over the place, like a roller coaster. Sent me to the emergency room, and I just had my first shot of methotrexate and was sent out the door. Stay tuned for more because there is a lot more to this.